Good, what is it? Afternoon. And it feels like I'm just kind of dropping by to check on some neighbors. When I was in law school down at Ole Miss, I rented a little house right over here on Carpenter Street, and I would come through here quite often. So it's good just to drop back by the neighborhood. Of course, I don't think many of you were here way back then. But in any event, it's just really great to be here to celebrate such a great anniversary. You see so much in the news and you read and hear when somebody new comes to town and we go out and we celebrate. But far too often we fail to really acknowledge and thank those who built this city. I'm from up in the country, Lebanon, Tennessee. We have an old saying that you're supposed to dance with the boy who brung you to the dance. Y'all brung us to the dance, so thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's just, and the greeting was so warm this morning. I go a lot of places. But it's just really warm. You're such a genuine family group. And to those who are visiting, want to welcome you to Memphis. I didn't know it was going to be chilly like this today. Stick around. You'll have something else in an hour or so. But 50 years of success. When you look at how many businesses have started and did not make it, but then to stand here with a homegrown company, 50 years of success. All across, of course, this city, this state, this nation, and 62 countries that you serve. So just thank you, and congratulations again. Let me say just a few words about Power and Telephone Company. Miller Pentecost, and I'm sure you probably know this, but I just love reading the story and telling it, along with just a couple of partners. And they had the just unbelievable sum of $15,000 each. And they got together and formed what is now this great company, Power and Telephone Company. That was back in 1963. The story is told many years ago how the company was named. So he said, well, how did they come up with that name? Well, it came from two sources. And he said, one, it just sounded better than telephone and power. And secondly, it was obvious that with all of the newfangled stuff that required electricity, household appliances, or hitting the market back then, that power would obviously be a bigger deal in the future than this thing called a telephone. I'm sure he's made a lot of statements, but he might wonder about that one. Something that back then was so heavy, indestructible, with the rotary dial, those things would never need replacing. And if you ever dropped one on your foot back then, you'll understand why someone would think that. And they weren't sure also that this telephone stuff would even pay the rent. So he said, we'll start with the word power. It's just good to start off with power, so that's why it's Power and Telephone as opposed to telephone and power. Well, again, he was a brilliant man, but this idea of this phone thing wouldn't work out. Mr. Miller Pentecost, I'm sorry to say you didn't get that one right, but still you got something right because it's still here. You know, then the whole idea of it not needing replaced, I remember when in my hometown, when there was one phone maybe in the neighborhood, and it was yes, I'm that old, and we had an aunt who lived in Seattle, and it was amazing at how you would have to get a long-distance phone call. First, your aunt or whomever would write you a letter, and they would tell you they're going to call maybe 2 weeks or a month later at a certain time. And then, this is the absolute truth, folks. This is what we used to have to do. And then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, you'd get all of the family. And the telephone in our neighborhood belonged to Mr. Starlin Bass and Miss Allen Bass. They lived right up the road. And on the day that phone call was scheduled to come in, we'd go up and just gather around that thing, and it was just amazing. We didn't think it was real. The only telephone we had is we'd take 2 tin cans and tie a string together, and we said that was a telephone. But here is Aunt Dud, we called her, way out there in Seattle, Washington, and we could talk to her. Well, the thing about it is so many times we'd go up there, and as they would say then, Central couldn't get us connected. Now, some of y'all know what Central is? They don't know what Central is, these young whippersnappers in here. Well, you had an operator, which was actually a woman. They were all women who had to, even in your little town, had to connect you. Can you imagine how many Centrals it took to connect you to Seattle, Washington from Lebanon, Tennessee? So many times we'd all go up there, and guess what? Central couldn't get us connected. So we'd have to start all over again. Aunt Dud would write us a letter telling she's going to call 2 weeks later, and then we'd all go back again. And maybe once or twice a year we'd get that phone call through. But then we started out with one phone, but now, let's see, there was a time in life, boys and girls, in which every house had a landline in it, a real telephone. But when you really were moving up in the world, guess what, folks? You had 2 telephones. And then some folks had 3 phones, 4 phones. So again, there was a market there. And of course, we know now what you have advanced to now. The market will never be exhausted, or the need for what you're doing will never be exhausted. Despite Miller Pentecost's slight miscalculation on the likelihood that phones and communications had already peaked back then, his partners, and of course Miller and Virginia, as we fondly refer to them, kept power and telephone growing for half century. And just shortly before his death, Miller received a congressional proclamation for his support of the advancement of the burgeoning telecommunications industry. And when I think of that, I think of just how rich we are right here in this city. This is the city, and it really gets me when folks are always dumping on our city about what comes out of here. When you look at what this city has given the world, right here from Memphis, Tennessee, the whole idea of Holiday Inns. It used to be that you didn't travel with your little rug rats because they didn't want them in these fancy hotels. Some guy came up with an idea that, well, guess what? We'll build something called a motel, and you won't have to go through the fancy lobby with your little rug rats getting in the fancy folks' way. You'll just pull your car right up in front of it and get out. No matter how many of them you got, you'll just run them right in there. Revolutionized the whole world. Mr. Sanders, the whole idea of the supermarket, yes, that concept started right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And then some guy had this crazy idea that folks would actually pay money to put a box on an airplane and fly it somewhere. They thought he was just the craziest guy. Who's ever just going to set up and just start paying money to fly boxes around on airplanes? Well, it started right here in this rich place called Memphis, Tennessee. And then your auto zones, and then your St. Jude Children's Hospital, all of that, just the spirit of discovery and innovation that started right here. And I'm now glad to add to that list of innovations that came out of this city, the name Power and Telephone Company. You have so much to be proud of. And back in 1983, when the company celebrated its 20th anniversary, thought it was getting old, Miller wrote a note to the employees, and he called it the Strand. And I have an image of it right here. And it's so important. I've looked at it, and it's just, I wish folks would just communicate like this. If you just bear with me. And it was called the Strand. The role of Strand is to support, just very simple. Yeah. How often do we stop and say, I'm really going to just support? We all need that. We might not say it, but to just hear somebody tell you that. In industrial psychology, they teach us that employees, sure, their salary is important, their working conditions, but just to know that they have your support, management support, is just as crucial as the salary and the other things. He went on, it does not conduct power or messages. because conductor does not have the strength or capability of being strung from one point to another without an unacceptable amount of sag and inefficiency. It is supported by strand. As a distributor, we do not manufacture power or communications equipment, nor do we build or maintain systems. Like strand, we do have the strength and capability of supporting the two. In 20 years, the rapid sales growth of Power and Telephone Supply Company has proven that this support role is a valued service. The Strand, a Power and Telephone Supply Company newsletter, will be published on a regular basis. Its purpose is to support the line of communications among our 200 plus employees so that information, knowledge, and encouragement may be shared. Signed, J.M. Pentecost, President. Give him a round of applause just for those thoughts. Now, it's really nice, of course, to celebrate the founding of a company like this great company and the first newsletter which we've just read. But I'm told, I understand that there are employees, customers, and vendors here today who have been with Power and Telephone for 30 years or more as well. And let's give them a round of applause. Been here 30 years or more. And as I said a minute ago, this is really a hidden gem right here in the city of Memphis, a family-owned company which through hard work, ethical business practices, and at times over the last half century, no doubt, just plain old sheer faith, has shared generously with its employees and the city of Memphis. My second stop this morning was just a few blocks over here, where we dedicated 20 housing units in an area that used to look like a war zone over there by the Tillman police station. We went in and they allowed me to get on that back track or whatever it was and take the first swing and tear it down, and then we went back. And guess who supports the Binghamton Development Corporation other than Power and Telephone? Give yourselves a round of applause for the community support. There's an old saying, give without remembering and receive without forgetting. And that's precisely the spirit that's really imbued throughout this great company. That's the spirit of Power and Telephone family, and for that, our city of Memphis is eternally grateful to you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Now, there are a couple of people who could not be here for this great 50th anniversary celebration, and I'd like to share with you their letters of congratulations. Just a minute ago, I mentioned one of these individuals who came up with a crazy idea. This letter is dated April 24th, 2013, addressed to Jim Pentecost, President and CEO, Power and Tele. Dear Mr. Pentecost, congratulations on your 50th anniversary. We appreciate our long-term partnership with Power and Tel and its contributions to our community. FedEx stands ready to support your customers and vendors around the globe, and we appreciate your allowing us to serve you. Signed by Fred Smith. Give Mr. Smith a round of applause in his absence. Almost finally, you got something from Washington some years ago, and you're getting something from Washington today. It's of such importance that I will read it. United States House of Representatives, proclamation by Congressman Steve Cohen, 9th District, Tennessee. And he starts his by saying, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi. Whereas, on behalf of the citizens of the 9th Congressional District of Tennessee, it is my distinct pleasure to honor the Power and Telephone Supply Company as they celebrate 50 years of business and service in the city of Memphis, and there are other details which I will not read, signed by the Honorable Stephen Cohen, 9th Congressional District of the United States House of Representatives. And now finally for me, from the city, who will come up and accept a proclamation, which I have written myself, for who will come up and receive this. Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to read all of mine.
Feel free.
Great. City of Memphis proclamation. Whereas it is fitting that we should recognize and commend those exemplary institutions that through an abiding commitment to excellence have contributed greatly to this city for many years, and whereas Power and Telephone Supply Company is one such entity established in 1963 that aims to enhance our community and add to the economic vitality and stability that all successful businesses contribute to, and whereas Miller Pentecost, along with a couple of partners, started this company in a garage in Whitehaven and later independently grew Power and Telephone Supply Company over a half century to a billion-dollar telecommunications company, along with the assistance of hundreds of dedicated associates, and whereas with a strong work ethic and sound business philosophy combined with faith and prayer, Power and Telephone Supply Company has prospered for 50 years in our community, and whereas I proudly join the Power and Telephone Supply Company family in celebrating the success of their business in our city, now therefore, I, AC Warton Jr., Mayor of the City of Memphis, Tennessee, do hereby recognize Power and Telephone Supply Company's golden anniversary. Give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Very well said, sir.
Thank you. And before we close out, I'd like to introduce a video from someone who could not be here, a videotaped message from the Honorable Bill Haslam, Governor of the great state of Tennessee.
I want to congratulate everyone at Power Intel on this special occasion, a celebration of 50 years of operations in Memphis. Power Intel is a success story not only for the Pentecost family, but for all the employees who have been a part of this enduring Tennessee business. Since Miller Pentecost started the company in a garage in Whitehaven in 1963, Power Intel has proved itself not only as a steady business, as a supply chain partner for the communications marketplace, but a participant in many charitable efforts. Power Intel has generated billions of dollars in revenue over the years, but more than a financial success, its employees and management are an example of what is good about Memphis and Tennessee. The company's reach goes beyond the U.S. border, and we're proud you're a part of this great state. Congratulations.
And let me close out on behalf of the City of Memphis. I want to thank you and congratulate you on your past successes. And I want to again let you know that we stand ready to support you in any way that you need. I said at the beginning, we pay a lot of attention to bringing in new companies, and that's great. We have to do that. But I want all of you to know that you are just as important to us as anybody we can bring in here. That's our commitment to you. Thank you so much for what you're doing for this neighborhood here. You don't brag about it. You don't see it all up on the billboards, but we know what you're doing, and we really, really appreciate it. So to the customers, the vendors alike, enjoy your stay here in Memphis. Have a good time and maybe get to see a Grizzlies game. I smell barbecue around here, and I'm sure someone has, as we used to say in the country, somebody's fixing me a plate back there. I believe I got a plane to catch in a few minutes, and guess what, folks? They don't feed you on those planes anymore. So I'm sure they've got my plate fixed back there, and in other Tennessee language, and I'm fitting to go eat it. Y'all think? Congratulations.